Today with relatively short notice and a busy week for you all starting up your semester. Can you hear me on the microphone? Okay, and you all can hear. Great. So I'm going to basically be providing an introduction to the concept of zero waste here. I did it in three parts, basically what is zero waste and the benefits of it, what's happening at the college level in terms of some of the facilities types of work for a zero waste campus, and then what could be done for curriculum in teaching zero waste, and what's happening on a national level to develop national standards for what we're calling sustainable resource management. So first I start with this phrase. How many people have heard of reduce, reuse, recycle before? It's one of the most well-known phrases in America and actually around the world. And what we're saying is if we really reduced, reused, and recycled, we'd be at zero waste or darn close. What we're trying to do is focus first on reducing and reusing, then recycle and compost the rest. We've done really well in working on recycling, particularly in the residential sector all over the United States and all over the world. More people recycle now than vote in America. The curbside recycling, the residential recycling programs are great. But the real benefits to the environment, to our society, and to jobs actually comes from reducing and reusing. And we haven't figured out how to support them as much as we need to and should. And that's what we're trying to do with the concept of zero waste. Toyota has this great phrase, recycle some, recycle more, and then recycle less. And that's the progression of a zero waste program, where you start with a little bit of recycling, doing some materials, some commodities, some types of focus for your programs, but then you expand them, do more recycling, and then you realize that we can't do what we want to do just by recycling. We've actually got to reduce and reuse. So that's how Toyota tried to translate it to their staff, that, yeah, we got to get as much recycling going as possible, but actually, we got to do the reduce and reuse stuff, and then it gets people thinking another way about it. There's actually a definition, a more formal definition of zero waste. This is the only peer-reviewed, internationally accepted definition of zero waste. It took us years to coalesce internationally through the Zero Waste International Alliance to come up with this definition, and it was changed in 2009 with some additional language to build on some input from Italy and Philippines, international dialogues there. There's three basic concepts in here. First is that all discarded materials are designed for someone to use. We don't want to burn or bury those resources. And our goal is to eliminate all discharges to land, water, and air. That's what zero means. There's principles at the ZWIA website, the ZWIA, the Zero Waste International Alliance website. There's principles at this URL to guide businesses and communities on further what do we want to do to achieve zero waste. And in that we say if you achieve over 90% diversion from landfills and incinerators, that's zero waste or darn close. So that was a measure of performance. The goal is zero, but the measure of performance to be recognized as a zero waste business or a zero waste community would be achieving 90% diversion from landfills or incinerators. One of the big connections that's driving people to zero waste today, and the opportunity that's out there today, is that we're literally throwing away our jobs. If we used the materials that we're discarding today more efficiently, more smart way, we would be able to create lots more jobs than we're creating today. If we had 10,000 tons of solid waste, if we landfilled it or burnt it in an incinerator, we'd create one job. If we composted that amount of material, we'd create 4 jobs. If we recycled it, we create 10 jobs. And if we reused that amount of material and products, we would create 75 to 250 jobs. And that's an indicator of why we need to focus on reuse and reducing, not just recycling and composting, because the jobs are in the reuse area. The majority of the jobs are in reuse and in the manufacturing that comes after the collection processes for recycling. And right now, about 80% of all the materials recycled in California for sure, and I believe in America, is being shipped overseas. So that means where we're doing the right thing in recycling, we're shipping the majority of the jobs overseas. So the opportunity is to think over, how did we get into this position, and can we redo it and renew it so that we reinvest those resources locally? When we look at green jobs, a recent study done here in April 2010 in California, of all the green jobs that were being reported, about 25% of all the green jobs in California were from recycling. So recycling is already a huge industry. It's a $350 billion a year industry. It's as large as the automobile industry used to be in America. And I say used to be because it's smaller than when those numbers were developed in 2001. It's 5 times the size of the disposal industry. You hear about the garbage industry being a big industry, and it is. But the recycling industry and reuse industry is 5 times that size, $350 billion compared to around 60 to 75 billion for the disposal industry. So recycling already is very significant, but if we're shipping 80% of our jobs overseas from the manufacturing, we could have even more jobs here locally. And if we reuse and focused on reuse, we'd have a lot more potential. In Los Angeles, where we did a zero waste plan for Los Angeles over the last number of years, we figured that even though they were at a recycling rate of about 60% already, they were still throwing away about $100 million of stuff every year. Of that stuff they were throwing away was $40 million of reusables from 2% of the tons. So we're not just focusing on tons, we've got to focus on value. The valuable materials in their products are more valuable being reused as products than recycled as materials. And the jobs are an indicator that that value can create jobs if we figure out how to better organize that system. Another major driver for zero waste, and the one that really catapulted zero waste into the forefront, has been the climate change connection. If you look at landfills, landfills are one of the largest sources of man-made greenhouse gases in America. The majority of the gases that are produced are methane. Methane acts faster in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide and is more potent than carbon dioxide in creating the greenhouse effect, by a factor of 21 to 23 times as potent as carbon dioxide over the 100-year horizon that typically you evaluate different greenhouse alternatives. It's 72 times as potent as carbon dioxide over the 20-year horizon. And that's because it acts faster in the atmosphere. So where do you think the methane is coming from in landfills? What's decaying? Cows. Pardon? Cows is one, and I have a solution to that from Ziri. Grow mushrooms before you feed the cows on waste products, and you break down the lignin before the cows do that. But in the landfill itself, where the cows may be on top of, or anyway, and what's creating the methane gas? Where does the methane gas come from? Decaying? Organics, decaying organics, exactly. So the goal in a zero waste world is to get all those organics out of landfills. Don't put them in there because it's the least efficient way of digesting and getting the value of the energy out of it, and has anything that's not done goes up in the atmosphere and has this huge effect on organics, food scraps, and yard trimmings, leaves, tree prunings, bushes, things of that nature. Okay, so you want to keep all that stuff out of the landfill, which is why communities all over the world are working on figuring out new collection programs, not only for their yard trimmings, which a lot of communities have gone to in the last decade, but now everyone's looking at food scraps and food-contaminated paper and how to collect those and have those go into composting systems or digestion systems. The other thing we like to highlight is the wasteberg. For every ton locally in a local landfill, there's 71 tons of waste produced upstream from mining, manufacturing, and distribution of products. That's another major reason why we can't recycle our way out of the situation we're in. We need to reduce the amount of mining, manufacturing, and distribution upstream, and those products that have already gone through that whole process, we need to use them over and over again until they wear out. If we don't, we're just throwing away resources and what else? Jobs. We're throwing away jobs. Exactly. So in California, a number of years ago, we looked at applying an EPA formula to figuring out what would be the effect if we recycled and composted all the materials that were still going to landfill at the time. It would be the equivalent of taking all cars off the road. And how many people have thought transportation and cars is a big factor for climate change? Right. So this is trying to highlight to you that this is a big deal. There are a number of Cool Cities programs that are promoting at the local level, cool cities, cool counties, to work on climate change and sustainability plans. The only one that includes zero waste as one of the goals is the Urban Environmental Accords. So if you Google that, Urban Environmental spelled out, Accords, it includes zero waste, and we urge, if you're developing a community plan, to look that up and cite that as one of the reasons and rationales for including and considering zero waste. Most of the cities that I've worked on zero waste plans for had previously adopted the Urban Environmental Accords. In their accords, they had agreed on zero waste as one of their goals, and the next step was to do a plan to develop zero waste policies, programs, and facilities. If you look at the pie chart, in many times the pie charts of all the greenhouse gas emissions, you will see typically waste or solid waste labeled as 1% to 3% of the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions in the country. Well, in 2006, someone at EPA did another look at the same exact data with a systems view to look at how can we influence the creation of these greenhouse gases in a different direction by looking at where they're created in terms of a system. And what we found out was that if you combine provision of goods and food, you're looking at 42% of all greenhouse gases in America could be influenced by zero waste or materials management policies. There's a huge change in thinking about how this is important for climate change. It really is significant. And it's the same data, it's just looking at it in a different way. So, as a recap, zero waste programs are the fastest and most cost-effective ways that local governments can contribute to reducing climate change, promoting sustainability, protecting health, and creating green jobs. Now, when you first heard, how many people have heard of zero waste before this lecture? Okay, so you've been hearing about it. When you talk to people about it, what's their first reaction? Impossible, right? Okay, they roll their eyes. And so, this is my slide to respond to that. First of all, I say nature is the model. Have anyone seen a landfill or an incinerator in nature? Someone claimed that the volcanoes were incinerators. I thought that was pretty questionable, dubious. But basically, nature handles standard temperature and pressure everything as a resource or a food or a shelter for something else. So part of the message of zero waste is when you can't figure out what to do, I say ask nature, what would nature do? And look at natural systems that have the similar type of problem. A friend of mine has the license for ZIRI technology for a solution that takes the CDs that are basically polycarbonate plastic coated with metal that are CDs and DVDs. And you dip that into the solution, and out comes a clean polycarbonate disc. And the solution is not acid, it's a biological system of algae and fungi, which for a living in nature eat rocks and survive on eating rocks. That's where they get their energy source from. So the metal coating is like eating rocks for these little guys. And so in America, we always think about recycling as either crushing or grinding something up. And what ZIRI, the Zero Emissions Research Initiative, talks about is how do we think outside of the box and use biology, chemistry, physics, natural principles, look at what nature has done, and see how that can be applied to your particular problem. So what would nature do is the first question, and nature is the model. The next thing is zero waste or darn close. When we were first looking at what could we do to get America in the mid-90s to think beyond curbside recycling, that we wanted them to do more, but how could we get people to think about that better when we're debating whether to adopt zero waste? We were walking down the streets of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at a national recycling conference, and there were some advocates for zero waste and others, accountants and engineers and more technical people were saying, oh no, you can't go there, that's just too audacious, it's not realistic and everything. And Eric Lombardi from Boulder, Colorado, EcoCycle said, well, how about if we say zero waste or damn close? And everyone laughed. It's been a laugh line ever since. And it got sanitized to darn close or pretty darn near in Austin. But the message still remains that it's about the journey, not the destination. If you're designing for zero waste, you want to find out why is stuff coming in and what can we do with it going out. On the stuff coming in, I like to say, who screwed up, right? Because waste is a symptom of inefficiency. It meant that someone thought it wasn't their job to make sure this was efficiently used. But in zero waste, we think it's all of our job to get to zero waste. We can't do it without everyone participating. It's a culture change. Anyone ever hear the phrase waste not, want not? As American as apple pie. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. Anyone remember that one? Great Depression. Great Depression, that's the battle cry of making it through the Great Depression. That's why thrift stores and reuse businesses are thriving right now in the down economy. Because it's making do with what you've got. And in zero waste world, don't focus so much on the zero as how do we design it out? What's wrong with it being created in the first place? How can we change that? And then what can we do to reuse, recycle, and compost? And if we can't figure out with that, then we use the natural principles through ZIRI and things of that nature, sustainable systems design, to come up with new, innovative things, which community colleges would be great places to do experiments and research on. How do we handle some of these things? The first research facility in the world has been created in Campanore, Italy, where they look at products that are coming in and say, this is a problem product, we can't recycle it, and they write the manufacturer and say, do you know your product is a problem for us? And they start a dialogue up and start looking at things. So community colleges would be a great place for looking at those types of opportunities. The big thing that was really exciting when we saw it in the mid to late 90s was that businesses are leading the way to zero waste. We found that there are businesses all over the world that were diverting over 90% of their waste from landfills and incinerators. And they were saving money. Every zero waste business we've looked at have saved money. They saved the most money by reducing. They saved the next most money by reusing and setting up reuse systems like returnable shipping containers and returnable pallets. And then they saved some through recycling and composting if the city has set up the rate structure and the services correctly to reward the waste reduction and not to give incentives for wasting more, like many programs have done previously. This is a list of businesses, large and small, all different types of business, electronic, organic businesses. There are a number on here from San Francisco, restaurants, because San Francisco in 2001 adopted zero waste as a goal, provided zero waste services to make it easier to reuse, recycle, and compost, and then gave them a discount if they did the waste reduction. So a business in San Francisco would have to pay more to waste more. And that's why there's lots of businesses. We didn't want the whole list to be San Francisco, but there's lots of businesses, over 90% in San Francisco, because it's a community that provided the services to enable businesses to save money and help the environment at the same time. And in Japan, 2,800 businesses adopted zero waste as a goal because they took the Kyoto Protocol seriously in the 90s. They funded ZERI, the Zero Emissions Research Initiatives, to figure out how to get to zero, and had ZERI help in the training of those businesses. And that's why there's so many businesses in Japan and their operations in America that are already zero waste businesses. Honda, Subaru, Toyota. These are all Ricoh, Epson. These are all Japanese businesses operating in our country. Toyota in San Antonio, as an example, nearby, that embraced it because of the Ministry of the Environment asked businesses in Japan to do this, and this was their response. They did it. 99% achieved zero to landfill, 34% achieved zero to burning about 6 or 7 years ago when we last had data from a world conference. And so you'll hear phrases like zero to landfill or zero waste. And when we say zero waste, we're saying zero to landfill or incinerator. So zero to landfill isn't good enough according to the ZWIA definition. Yes, sir?
Do you know how the Japanese companies' American plants compare to the Japanese plants?
My understanding is they're doing well. I know Ricoh pretty well. And we've done a number of trainings in Orange County in the Ricoh facility, and the CEO of Ricoh came over to the country and physically walked around the plant, seeing what was going on. They have an incredible system of accountability they have it in everyone's job description, that zero waste is something that they're supposed to be working towards. And they provide a suggestion awards program, recognition program, do trainings for them. They have this whole culture geared to reduce, reuse, recycle to get to zero waste.
You suppose that's easier to do in California than someplace like South Carolina?
We're getting calls from all over the nation, from businesses, because again, in the down economy, businesses can't increase their revenue so much, but they can be more efficient. So to save money, when businesses go to save money, they find these articles about zero waste and all these businesses saving money, and that helps them address that opportunity. And as this list shows, saving money is at the top of the list of why businesses would pursue this, but there's also other benefits, reducing liability. How long do you think a business is responsible for their waste? If they send it to a landfill and the landfill leaks, how many years do you think they're responsible for that waste? Forever, exactly. We got someone who knows this stuff. So the point is, that's a liability. It may not be on your balance sheet, but there's been a number of instances where the landfill leaks, the accountants, the lawyers, and the engineers go through the records, see who contributed what, and they send them the bill for their proportionate share of that cleanup cost. And that's why we say reducing the liability, increasing the efficiency. If you look at this pie chart, Gil Friend, who specializes in doing sustainability analyses for businesses, looks at all the energy, water, materials, products that they buy to make their own product, and then gives a summary report with a pie chart. And on this one, a sample company, he shows the blue is all the stuff that they bought that went to product. The gray on here is all the stuff that was bought that went to waste. And he said the average American business is actually 90 to 95% goes to waste. That's why there's these factor 4, factor 10 programs in industry that talk about we can do 4 times better in efficiency. We can do 10 times better in efficiency. Lean manufacturing is the EPA program that works on that. It's saying that, if we can't increase revenue, we can decrease costs. Zero waste shows the way on how to decrease costs. We already went over reducing greenhouse gases and emissions. The marketing edge, one of my favorite, all-time favorite TV commercials was Toyota's. How many people saw this? It was about 4 years ago when climate change was really hot, and the car was up on a mountaintop made of mud and thatch and all sorts of natural elements. Anybody remember seeing that ad? It was really cool. So the car is this idyllic scene, snow-capped mountain with water lake in front of it, and the car over the 30 seconds disappeared into the ground. And the voiceover said, we're not only for zero emissions, we're for zero waste. And what were they saying by that? They were saying, we're the greenest of the green. You can't get much greener than zero. And they didn't have to cite no reports from EPA or the state or anywhere about how green they were. When they say zero, that gets people's attention. And that's what they were doing, and it was a very effective campaign. There was this little car, I forget the name of this, Prius, yes. Prius, right, yeah. That's the name. Anybody remember how well the sales did of that car? Through the roof, exactly. So the marketing edge is not insignificant. And what we saw in 1990, we've had various stages of interest in sustainability. There was a bunch of interest in the 1990s. By 2000, businesses were trying to be greener than the next. But now in this down market, we're seeing a sustained interest in sustainability in business because it is all about the efficiency and doing things better and smarter. And business is getting it, and they're using it to compete in the marketplace to say, buy our stuff because we're good guys or good women. And it's the right thing to do. A lot of people that work for business want to do the right thing, and there's lots of them out there. So it's an impressive reason for a lot of businesses to get it going. A lot of CEOs have said they want to do what they heard about this other company. So that's part of what that message is all about. So communities, what community wouldn't want to help their businesses get all those benefits we just talked about for their businesses? So we now see communities all over the world adopting zero waste as a goal and seeing how can we provide the types of services, the types of incentives to make it easier for our businesses to get all those benefits. And there's countries like New Zealand, South Korea, Scotland that have adopted zero waste as a goal for the whole country. Over 2/3 of New Zealand cities have adopted zero waste individually, and they were the ones who first asked their federal government to adopt zero waste, and the federal government followed the lead of the locals. There's over 40 cities just in the last year that have adopted zero waste in Italy. Italy is just on fire. literally because there's a proposal for lots of burners, incinerators, and the response was, don't build those incinerators polluting our cities and our farms. Build zero waste operations to do it better. And you'll see large cities, small cities, rural areas, urban areas, far outreaches of British Columbia, regional districts, Halifax, Nova Scotia since the mid-90s. So they're all over the world. This is just a small selection. In California, we happen to have a lot of them because the state in 2001 adopted zero waste as a goal and said it was one of their 8 goals for the state of California. And they, cities, when they heard the state had adopted it, that took the heat off of the question, is this a crazy idea that a bunch of environmentalists were pursuing, or did it have legitimacy? By the state adopting it as a goal, it legitimized it. Without any program by the state, communities that were progressive have moved forward, adopted zero waste as a goal, which is what they need to do to get on this list, and many of them have developed plans and are implementing them. So some key lessons for pursuing zero waste is the first most important one is you got to ask. And we were wondering, after the state adopted in 2001 the zero waste goal, there wasn't much happening until 2004. And we looked at each other and said, did you ask anyone to adopt zero waste? Did you ask anyone to adopt zero waste? Nobody had asked. We asked the state then to do a challenge to the cities and counties of California and businesses to adopt zero waste as a goal and plan for it. The state, ironically, chose not to because they were off on doing some other stuff. So we started asking, and we started doing conferences and trainings. And what we're finding is that when we get that message across, people get it. I'm an elected official in my hometown. I was mayor for a year, now on this town council, 6,400 population, a little bit smaller than some of your places around here. But one of the things I learned from that was 2 to 3 people at a council meeting is a tidal wave of public activity. How many people here have 2 to 3 friends? Okay, you get the idea? If you go forward at a council meeting in public testimony, open public comment, which every council meeting has, and you say, I just heard about this zero waste thing. I'd like our town to be in the forefront, and why don't we adopt a zero waste goal and develop a plan on how to get there? And then your 2 or 3 other friends come up and say the same thing. I think that idea was great. I think we ought to do it for this reason and that reason. And after 2 or 3 comments, the council is going to say, huh, interesting. They are organized. It's not just one person's idea. They're organized. That's the key for a politician. Not that someone came up with their pet idea, but that they were organized, because that's either an asset or a threat. So what the council then does is turns to staff and say, staff, why don't you look into that? Okay? So that's how you create your jobs in the future. You go to your community and you ask them to adopt zero waste as a goal, or wherever you have influence, to your college, to your church group, to your organization. Do a zero waste event. Do a zero waste lunch. Do a zero waste stadium. Do something to highlight zero waste. And all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing it catching on, because everyone's doing these little bits of zero all over the place, and it's starting to build momentum. And that's what a movement's all about, moving forward. So you need to ask, one of the key tools is doing it in sustainability or climate change plans. We've seen a lot of great opportunities there. In the pending Mountain View College sustainability plan, I was advised, it does have zero waste as one of the potential goals in that, and I think that would be great if you could do it. What we're seeing is when you adopt in a broader plan, like a climate change plan or a sustainability plan, zero waste, people start thinking about it, start reading up on it, start trying to understand it, and then you can come back with the details on how to implement that. And typically, we ask people to adopt zero waste as a goal and to return with a plan on how to meet that goal within 6 months to a year. We try to connect to other problems: jobs, budget, economy, siting problems, sustainability, climate change, self-reliance. Self-reliance in Hawaii was a big one, where they import 90% of their food and energy. And so that was a really big deal when we did the zero waste plan in Hawaii, which was a tough assignment, but we handled it. Identifying local zero waste businesses and promoting them. Everywhere we go, there's zero waste businesses. In Austin, it was Dell and Bar Mansion and a number of different companies. Toyota nearby in San Antonio. So wherever we go, we try to find who's the best recycling business that you know of, and we check their numbers out, see if they're at 90%, or what they need to get to 90%, so we can say they're at 80 and they're working towards 90, and by the time we're done with their planning, they will implement what we help them figure out. Because if you have a local zero waste business, it really speaks volumes to decision makers, where you can point to someone locally and have them stand up at a meeting and say, this is how we did it. Don't tell it can't be done. This is how we did it and how much money we saved. And educate and develop local models of how to move forward with zero waste. To guide us in that, the Zero Waste International Alliance has come up with global principles for zero waste communities and global principles for zero waste businesses. And tomorrow in our detailed training, we'll be going through the community ones particularly, but here I'm just going to show them to you as examples of things to really keep in mind. Adopting the ZWIA definition, establishing goals, engaging the whole community. ZWIA says don't trust the experts because the experts are who got us into the situation we're in right now. So we don't have a lot of zero waste experts, so you need to really rely on your gut common sense, your good analysis, and looking deeply at your opportunities and challenges. Managing resources, looking at how to fund the program, education and outreach, doing audits and assessments to figure out how much material you have, developing residual separation and research facilities like I mentioned in Campanore, ending subsidies for wasting. In this country, in the economy we've got now, we're still subsidizing industry to industrialize America at the tune of $2.6 billion a year, which was documented in the mid-90s in this document, Welfare for Waste, to highlight that when everyone was talking about we're subsidizing welfare, well, we're also subsidizing major companies to waste. And that was because we want to industrialize America. And, most of these date back to the 1800s. It worked. So we don't need those subsidies for wasting anymore. Zero waste businesses, we talked about how they're leading the way. GRN is the Grassroots Recycling Network, who's the nation's leader in promoting zero waste. And as part of the ZWIA principles, they particularly emphasize new rules and incentives, producer responsibility, procurement, buying stuff using supply chain logistics, putting into your specifications what you want in a zero waste way, and zero waste infrastructure, referring to having the composting facilities, the recycling facilities, the reuse facilities that you need for all these types of services to happen. The business principles, there's 10 of them, again, are, as indicated here, triple bottom line. Who knows what the triple bottom line is? Anyone? Right, or equity, environment, and economics. Equity meaning social equity, but people, planet, profits is much easier to say. So that's an important component. Precautionary principle, who knows what that is? Like in the Hippocratic Oath? What's the Hippocratic Oath? No, do no harm, right. So the precautionary principle is if you think anyone's watching out for your health and safety with products like toys or food, what percent do you think is being tested and watched out for? It's pretty small. So the precautionary principle says, hey, let's watch out for ourselves. What types of toxic things are we using that we could use less toxic? Are there alternatives? Could we put in native plants instead of lawn that require lots of pesticides and water to do it? So that's the precautionary principle. Zero waste to landfill or incineration, or what percent do we say is pretty darn close? Anybody? 90%, right. Taking back products and packaging by producers and retailers, buying reused, recycled, and composted, preventing pollution, reducing waste, highest and best use of the materials, using economic incentives, products or services not being wasteful or toxic, and using non-toxic production. So these are some of the details of zero waste businesses that is basically been the laundry list of when we get down the road and people are really trying to fine-tune their programs. All 10 of those things are going to be really important. But the one that we've really focused on that's really distinct about what zero waste advocates for is the 90%. That's the key measure of progress, so that no more than 10% are landfilled, no solid waste are processed in facilities that operate above biological temperatures around 200 degrees Fahrenheit to recover energy or materials. And in the descriptions of this, it highlights that you can save 5 times or more the amount of energy from reducing, reusing, recycling, and composting than you can produce by burning waste or by landfilling waste and having it digested in a landfill to create methane. So it's, those destructive technologies are what we're saying is the wrong way to go. And that's because of how many tons created upstream from mining, manufacturing, and distribution? 71 tons upstream, right. And that's why if you look at the life cycle that goes upstream to what it takes to get that product to market, that's when it really sinks in. Other measurement issues, looking at per capita and percent diversion gets in more of the detail. Alternative daily cover is more of an issue in California, but it is around the country some issue. Dirty MRFs is an issue. Dirty MRFs refer to material recovery facilities that accept mixed solid waste for those facilities. This for me? Yeah. Not clean, source-separated materials. And dirty MRF sounds good that you can recycle a lot of stuff without people having to worry about it. But the downside of dirty MRFs is people don't have to worry about it. And they don't get the benefits of reducing their costs. They just keep paying to that central black box that keeps taking everything. And you just keep paying what you had been. They'll recycle it, and they'll get some of the material out. Dirty MRFs vary from 9% diversion, 9, that's 91% thrown away, to around 45 to 50% in some places, depending on how well they are designed, how well they're operated, and how well they are enforced in terms of what comes into the facilities in terms of contaminants. So dirty MRFs is a red flag that you really need to be careful about when that's being proposed. They range dramatically. And who loses? Who doesn't get the benefit? The consumer. The residents and the businesses don't get the benefit from a dirty MRF. That's the point, exactly. One of the questions is, if you burn wood scraps, does that count? That gets into the fine details. We'll go into that if you want. Value, not just tons. What was the percent in LA that we said was from reusables of the tons? Anybody remember? 2%. And how much of the $100 million did that 2% generate in LA? 40 million. So it's not just about tons, it's about the value. And how many more jobs are there from reusing compared to landfilling? 75 to 250 more jobs compared to everyone for landfilling. What would nature do? We've talked about, and the WARM model is a measurement tool that EPA uses that is available on their website for you to use to evaluate your college, your church, your community, looking at the data and putting it into good language. To develop a zero waste plan, this is a scope of what you would normally go through to actually accomplish this stuff. You get all your data together, you figure out what is your existing system, all your, the amount of materials that you're recycling, the amount of materials that you're reusing, composting, landfilling, burning, put it all together, look at where it's coming from for businesses and campuses. We have a list of 9 generating sources that include your cafeteria, your grounds, different places that different types of materials are generated. And then you look at who screwed up, what could be done differently. You figure out who should be involved in developing your plan. Get everyone involved as much as possible is the Zero Waste International Alliance recommendation. The service opportunities analysis is referring to what we used to call the gap analysis or the voids analysis. And it's basically looking at your situation. You've read about other places that have done zero waste and great things. What's missing in your situation? And we say whatever's missing is an opportunity for someone to provide the service. That's why we call it a service opportunity analysis, to look at for either public or private to provide those services. And then once we figure out what the existing system is, what we'd like to see happening, then the question is what types of policies, programs, and facilities are needed to get us down the road. And when we do the programs, we provide a menu of what people could adopt. There's lots of different ways of getting to zero, and we tailor that to the community. We look at the economics, the jobs, the greenhouse gases, and then develop an implementation plan, including the low-hanging fruit. So for colleges, translating that, the next bunch of slides came from a couple of talks I've given to college groups. And for colleges, there's opportunities for reducing and reusing. Organics, especially food scraps, a lot of colleges are pioneering. A lot of them put on-site composters on campus. Colleges have the opportunity because you have a little bit of extra space compared to downtown businesses and things of that nature to put an on-site composter that look like either a hot tub for a small situation or an enclosed roll-off box that's fully enclosed. There's about 50 different vendors out there that provide those, and a lot of campuses are going to doing that because if you can do it on site, you don't have to ship it off site. And what % do you think it costs to ship waste off site? 80%. 80%, that's right, 80 to 90% to ship it off site. So you can invest that money that you're paying to haul it away today. That's your cash that you can invest in buying a box to put your organics in, add in some landscape materials to have a mix of browns and greens, and you got a food scrap composting program. C&D, construction and demolition debris for remodeling, new construction, demolition, huge amount of materials there, 90% of which could be recycled pretty easily. Reusing the used building materials is a higher priority. Zero waste at events and venues is one of the hottest things that's going on. We talked about that earlier. Green Sports Alliance has now adopted zero waste as a goal nationally for stadiums all over the country for the major sports to adopt zero waste at their stadiums. And the colleges all over the country are adopting zero waste at their stadiums, in their, for special events. In Davis, 98% was recovered at their Whole Earth Festival for the past several years. And there, one of my favorite examples is they put deposits on durable plates and silverware of $1 a plate. And then when people turn in their plates after using them, they can either get their $1 back or leave that as a contribution for the cost of keeping that system going. And again, they've done everything to figure out how to optimize things. In San Diego, they have Earth Day for about 75,000 people, and they got 90% diverted last year, according to a call this morning with one of the organizers there. So it's one of the hottest opportunities for doing something about zero waste, even if the city hasn't done something. And one of the keys to it is, do you have a place for the compostables to go? So that's where the on-site composters is so important, and why colleges have a leg up on most other places, because you usually have a place that you can stick a on-site composter. Resource assessments are key, although that basically is looking at what you have. You don't have to spend a lot of money on it. There's a lot of consultants out there that will ask you to get everything down to the 1/10 of a pound in order to figure out how much stuff you've got. My feeling is, for planning purposes, all you need is enough information to make a decision. And if you've got a bunch of accountants above you, well, maybe you need detailed data, but not everyone needs that. I like what Rick Anthony suggests from San Diego, which is photos. Photos really are worth 1,000 words. So look in your bin, open the top of your bins, take a picture of what's there. If it's in bags, take a couple out, open them and take a picture of that. And pretty soon you'll have a good idea of what you're throwing away and from where. And that's where the resource assessments really pay off, to figure out what you need to target. On-site, oh, there's 80%. So if you forget it, go to the slides. Compare yourself year by year, continuous improvement, the Japanese Kaizen, and make sure avoided costs are captured in the budget. Particularly important for businesses. Colleges usually do a better job at this, but for businesses, they sometimes when they get all these savings, the company says, that's great, what are you going to do next year? And they don't get to reinvest it in new programs. So being able to reinvest the savings into new programs to get you more and more efficient is part of what the sustainable.
Company employees or a group at a company become black belts and green belts to be able to do the Kaizen?
Yeah, right. Black belt.
I mean, how do you incorporate the Kaizen of the lean?
That's like. They don't need to be certified. Like the RICO example I was talking about earlier, you have rewards programs, you have training programs, you have recognition programs. So those are the ways that you get to continuous improvement. The bosses usually don't know where waste is happening. It's the people who are doing the work that know. So if you engage them, that's why it's so important to have 100% employee participation. If you engage them, reward them, recognize them, train them, and encourage them, it's amazing, the change in the culture that comes from that.
So you just need one person in your group who would know about the main piece?
The one person would be the cheerleader that puts it all together. And you know, depending on how big it is, it could be, you know, one person or multiple. But if it's everyone's job, things change more quickly. Also, if you have a mentor, RICO challenged their suppliers to adopt zero waste as a goal. They wanted to do business with businesses that shared their values. So they asked their suppliers, didn't require it, but asked their suppliers, would you be zero waste? And Advanced Micro Devices, as one of them that spoke at one of our conferences, said within 6 months from RICO asking them, they were over 90%. With the encouragement and the advice and training that RICO gave them on how to get there. So it doesn't have to be a long thing. That's the other reason why businesses are leading the way. Communities, to get things off the ground, take years for all this. Businesses, though, can act on it really quickly, and if they embrace it, can implement a lot of these programs quickly. Okay, and the challenges is one of the things. In LA, we first came up with this idea of a challenge because in LA, the zero waste plan was a 5-year process. 3,000 people were involved in stakeholder meetings all over town. It was run like a political campaign with coffees at people's houses, interviews of business leaders and stakeholders and focus groups and every conceivable tool for getting the sense and pulse of the community to feed into the community plan. But through that planning process, it's hard to keep everyone engaged and involved and interested. So we came up with, how do we do that? How do we do it? So we came up with a challenge, and that's where we came up with the idea of asking everyone to do at home, at work, at play, wherever you have influence, something 0. And if you do it, all of a sudden, all those pieces are going to start picking up momentum, and you'll tell each other about them and learn from each other, and it creates a whole change in the culture. So we did that in LA, we did it in Austin. Cal State University Chico did a twist on it. Tess from National Public Radio was given an assignment by a producer to carry around garbage for 2 weeks and tell on air what problem she had getting to 0 waste. So she had to keep all of her garbage with her in a plastic bag and carry it around for 2 weeks. And every day she would tell about the stories about, well, initially I said, I'm not going to put my cat poop in there. I'm ruling that out. That's not in the equation. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to take that around. She started doing things like buying in bulk and not buying as much stuff and being careful about what she bought and all those things you've heard about for years, but when you're really striving yourself for 0, it really gets you thinking about things much more carefully. Bring your bag to the store and all that type of stuff. Then she started looking for things like boneless chicken, so she didn't have the bones in her waste. And by the end of the 2 weeks, she went out to restaurants a lot. Which didn't really count, but she got the message and she shared that in a fun way. And so at Chico, they loved that story. So for Earth Day, they were carrying around bags. The Environmental Club were carrying around bags all over campus. It was a sign of honor if you had a bag of garbage with you, of all this stuff that you were generating and thinking about and working towards 0 waste. We've talked about the venues and events. And, Tess Bigland was the story I just told you on public radio. And these are just examples of events that I've been involved with. But I did want to highlight this group, Greening Initiatives for Venues and Events, is a technical council of the California Resource Recovery Association. And these are all people who work in greening of events and trying to get to 0 waste for events. And they have lots of resources. They've got a listserv of about 300 people on it all over the country. So if you're looking for resources, they've got a lot of them on their website at crra.com, and then go to the Technical Council for Greening Initiatives. Training opportunities is the third part of the talk I wanted to highlight. Over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity under a federal Department of Labor grant, $5 million went to 3 community colleges that collaborated in Southern California, Santa Monica College, Irvine Valley College, and Golden West College, to develop the first in the nation resource management certificate program that counted towards their associate's degree, accredited by the state. And it was based on an industry training program that our State Recycling Association, CRRA, had developed for a couple years previously and has been on a regular basis providing. So the content CRRA provided, and then the colleges worked together to come up with curriculum that the 3 colleges went together to the state and said, we want to implement these programs to train the recycling folks in the future. And one of the goals was to get articulation to 4-year colleges so that their associate's degrees would count towards the 4-year degrees if people wanted to go on, so that you had career ladders being developed for those who wanted to go into this field in different levels. So what was the first in the nation was the 4-credit community college classes, not certificate program. These are 4-credit counting towards the degree program. These are the types of courses that CRA, the State Recycling Association, has been providing for 5 years now. An intro course on recycling and 0 waste, and then electives in all these different topics, C&D, EPR, organics, commercial, business recycling, 0 waste planning, businesses again, another business course.
Textbooks are already available?
These PowerPoints are basically what we use as text for the community colleges. Textbooks was one of the biggest problems. I was actually paid to try and help them figure that out, came up with a list of suggested textbooks, and then the instructors were the ones, and they included those in their proposal to the state for accreditation, but then the professors, the instructors, are the ones who make the final call on which text they use, and some of them use the ones I recommended, some have used others. There are no good texts in this field. That's why the filming here to have something documenting the message along with the PowerPoints is such an important component of what we're doing here today, because we need to develop those types of materials. We're in the process of working towards that. And this is the contact information. And this whole presentation will be available through Mountain View College for you to get these details afterwards. But this was a really interesting slide on why the training is important. When you look at a slide from April 2010 in California of what type of things should students know in order to get work doing green jobs for business, these are the things that have vehicle technology, alternative energy, codes and standards and legislation, pollution reduction control, information technology, principles of energy conservation, and waste minimization, almost double anything else. So businesses are the ones who are demanding and wanting students with this education. So that's part of our message, is that there's jobs out there, and it may not be a green job. What we're seeing is that there's a lot of places where people with the green training are hired by a business for one position. It may not be a sustainability coordinator or a green person. It may be somewhere in the organization. But when they find out that they have the background, they get assigned to do the green stuff and the sustainability stuff, and then all of a sudden they're identified as stars in that company and start rising, because that's what the companies are looking for, is people that can help them figure this stuff out because it's new. So that's part of what the message is, that there's jobs out there in lots of different shapes and forms. As part of our research, we looked at the jobs and skills analysis, what the job targets were at local, state, and federal government, businesses, service providers, consultants, schools, at all different levels with all different types of skills, and we had different people involved in providing input into that. This is a nice summary of the types of jobs out there for government agencies, for service providers, from reuse, recycling, composting business, hauling companies, landscape business, events management, consultant, there's lots of things. And then in business, there's all different types of businesses. Basically, the whole gamut of business is trying to green up. So there's huge opportunities there. And it may be a recycling position or account representative, sales, customer service. It may be specific, events, zero waste coordinator, or it may not. These training programs are gearing up for a broad training that could be used in a lot of different ways. In California, job qualifications for entry, mid, and senior level are identified here, just to give you a feel for some of the things that we'd be looking for. The recycling organizations in North America, RONA, is now working through this grant program that we had for the community colleges in Southern California to develop national standards for industry training programs, so that when people move from one state to the other, they'll be able to use their certification to give them a leg up in other states, and to provide additional value to those with credentials, and over time for people to then be requiring or encouraging people to come with those credentials. So with a national standard, we can actually do that. And what we're calling it is sustainable resource management, with a tagline of reduce, reuse, recycle to zero waste. And RONA, this is a description of RONA, who they are. And the goals are to support state-based industry programs, coordinating with other service providers, including the colleges and universities, providing certification both of the programs that are being offered, the training programs, and certification of the professionals through some sort of national test, proficiency exam, that would be offered at the local level. The approach is adopting a plan, which we've done in August last year, complete our jobs and skills analysis, identify student learning outcomes, develop criteria for certifying programs, and developing the proficiency exam through our Rona University. And certifying state-based training programs, develop and administering a national proficiency exam, helping create demand for the certificates, and supporting good green jobs and highest and best use of resources locally. The next step is to create a certification board. We've got 33 applicants in from all over the country, and we're recommending 9 people to be the first board at our meeting next week. Building on the experience of programs that have been offered for years, helping to form new programs like you all may want to do at your colleges, getting colleges or universities to certify. Penn State University has offered to certify anyone. So if you get a program going for a small fee, they can give you the certification and work with you on the details of how to go about doing that. Having a minimum of 30 hours of instruction. In Illinois, they're working with the community colleges to roll out to 47 community colleges a state recycling training program where they're going to have 2 40-hour courses with a multiplicity of information in those courses. So 80 hours of content, way more than what we're saying is the minimum, but that was the minimum the community colleges needed to offer it as a certificate program. So they're trying to, again, get that career ladder going, so it's a little more time, but a little more value because it'll be a certificate of the community college. And Rona U won't offer classes, so we're not competing with ourselves, with our prime target of the state organizations. We've identified student learning outcomes with 4 categories of student learning outcomes that are highlighted here. With the 4 key areas having an introduction, one of the 4 being changing the culture, focusing on how do we get people to adjust with the new rules and incentives and outreach and education we talked about earlier. Focusing on how do we get communities to embrace these concepts and how do we get business to embrace it are the 4 categories geared to the potential audiences that they might work for, which are businesses or communities are where the most jobs will be. And then all different things like management, outreach and education, collection programs, processing, markets, economics, policies, health and safety as things that would be in different courses. Rona has lots of information. Don't have a lot of time to go into the detail of it, but Rona has discount programs for containers, recycling containers with Rubbermaid, steep discount. So if you're looking to add more recycling containers to your campuses, check out at recyclingorganizations.org. Go to the Rona University section and the Rubbermaid deal, and they've got a great service being offered for people to get discounts for containers. We're working on, they have all sorts of resources there, including college zero waste principles, guides for zero waste at events. And as an example of guides for zero waste at events, I've got one with me in my briefcase still. But it's a guide from UC Davis. The whole University of California system has adopted zero waste as a goal, and they have a great guide at Davis for facility managers on how to get to zero waste at events and venues, and with sample signs and artwork and language and how to approach it. So I'll get that out when I'm done, and you can look at that if you're interested. But at Rona, there's just a lot of resources for colleges interested in moving in both facilities arena and in the curriculum arena. So as a recap, take a look at the national standards. If you're interested in being involved with this, we have a Survey Monkey on the website for you to express what you think is important. and that'll get you into the loop of more information coming out. If you have things you'd like to share with us to go on the resources guide, please send those. And consider asking your college to adopt zero waste or organize a zero waste event or challenge. So if you're not for zero waste, we say, how much waste are you for? And I like to turn that back on the audience. Given you're the green team, I'm hoping for a good answer. How much waste are you for? Zero. Okay, I didn't hear many people. Let's try that again. How much waste are you for? Zero. Okay. Now, we're getting there. We're getting there, but we're not quite there. So remember, it's a journey. Zero waste is all about a journey. But we do like some results. So how much waste are you for? Zero. Okay. Thank you very much. Be happy to answer questions. We've got, I guess, 15 minutes left of what was planned, and I'll be here for a while, and you can come up and take a look at the resources either now or through the questions or after.